The more you resist it, the more you'll fear it. The resistance, the act of resistance itself, is what's making you believe that this thing is actually scary because you're resisting it. So you're telling yourself, oh, this thing must be scary if I'm constantly resisting it. And so then you'll continue to resist it because you now believe that it's scary. And this is something important to understand if you, like me, again, this is all my own experience. I'm not a therapist. These are the things I've had to understand and work through to get to where I want to be in my life, to do the things I want to do, to not feel so scared and uncertain all the time, despite all the uncertainty and scariness in life. The more you resist something, you prevent yourself from doing it because of the fear, because of the uncertainty, the more you'll believe that this thing is scary. So a lot of it, not all of it, of course, there are some things that are genuinely dangerous and threatening to you, and you should be mindful of that. But a lot of the time, the things that we resist are only scary to us because we're convincing ourselves that they're scary through our resistance. And so, of course, the only way out of that mindset is through it, meaning you have to do the thing that you're resisting, because it's through that lack of resistance, that flow, that willingness to engage in something, that you show yourself it's actually not scary because now you've done it. And if you've now done it, it must mean that it's not scary, because otherwise why would you do it? And I know this is kind of maybe a little convoluted, a little bit difficult to understand, but I do think that a lot of the time we are convincing ourselves of things that aren't necessarily true for us. They're things either we've been taught and conditioned to believe throughout our lives, or through repetition, we now believe them to be true. And so I think it's really important that if you find yourself struggling with resistance, right, you're noticing yourself constantly resisting something that you circle back to. Because a lot of the time, the things that are genuinely aligned with us, we circle back to them even if there's resistance there, right? We might attempt it, hit a block, feel that resistance, and say, okay, we're not going to do this. It's too scary. It's too uncomfortable. But then you come back to it, time and again. That, to me, is a sign that this thing is aligned with you. It's just the fear, the resistance that's blocking you from actually attempting it. So I think when you notice this, whatever it might be that's aligned with you, and you feel that resistance, the best way out of that is through it. So the resistance itself is not a sign to back away. It's a sign to push through. Obviously, I'm not saying anything revolutionary here, of course. What I think is maybe a more nuanced perspective on resistance is that the resistance is only scary because you're resisting. The resistance is only creating that feeling of fear and anxiety and uncertainty because you continue to resist the thing that is creating that feeling. But the moment you stop resisting and you just do, with the fear, of course, with all the uncertainty, all the anxiety, you now reprogram your view on whatever it is that you were resisting this whole time. Now, all of a sudden, it's not scary because you did it. So how scary could it be if you've already done it? And so now you're showing yourself, okay, I can trust that the fear I'm feeling here is not necessarily a sign that there's danger here. And that makes it so much easier to recognize what actually is dangerous and what is just resistance based on uncertainty, fear, insecurity, all those things that are maybe a little bit more ego-based. And that's really important. It's important to understand the difference between the two types of danger and threatening feelings, because then you're going to resist everything and never be able to move forward towards things that are just scary because it's challenging your sense of self versus things that are scary because they're actually dangerous. When you don't have clarity on those, you might do things that are dangerous thinking it's just challenging your sense of self, and vice versa. And we don't want that. We want to have some semblance of clarity around the difference here so that we can understand what to do when it comes to our concept, our self-concept. What is aligned with us, what we have to risk in order to get to where we want to be, versus when we're risking, our well-being. We don't want to do that. So I want this podcast episode to be an encouragement towards the things that you're resisting, to sit, work through them, document them, understand what they are, and then risk doing one of those things. Again, be mindful of what is actually dangerous for you. If you notice that there's something that could threaten your well-being, your mental well-being, emotional, physical, maybe don't attempt that. Start with something small, something a little bit lower stakes, and see how you feel after you do it. That is going to slowly start to reprogram how you feel about resistance or what you think about resistance moving forward, so that the things that were once scary because you were resisting them now no longer are, because you're no longer resisting them. So you are kind of changing your perception of the world by just doing something different, which of course, again, not revolutionary to say, but I think it bears repeating because we can forget it easily. I can, at least. This is something that I have to remind myself of often. The fact that I'm resisting it might just be the reason why there's so much resistance, because I'm just telling myself over and over again through my resisting that it's scary. it might not actually be scary. And over time, the more you do that, the more you push through that resistance, you show yourself that this thing is not actually scary. The only thing that was scary was the resistance, and convincing yourself that it was scary through resisting. The more you show yourself that you're actually capable of way more than you thought you were, which is so important for us to see about ourselves, that we're actually capable, that we're not constantly, scared and uncertain or incapable of handling the uncertainties of life. We are, because realistically, this thing is probably not that scary. It's just the way we were seeing it. So if our perception is what's crafting our experience of this life, then that means that you might be way more capable than you think you are. You just haven't attempted certain things to show yourself that. So while we might be attempting to maintain some level of control through resistance, we do have control, just in different ways that we aren't utilizing. So the control you have here is your perception of certain circumstances. That's where your control lies, not in whether or not you will achieve something, the outcome, avoiding uncertainty altogether. That's not possible, and resistance might make you feel like it is. But really what your control is the way you see something. You can change your perception of something, and that changes the way you then act, and then the things you learned through feedback from how you're acting and how you're showing up for yourself, which will then change the way you see yourself. That's where your control is. And I think that's what we need to focus on a little bit more, rather than thinking that we can control the uncertainty of life through resisting things that are scary. The resistance is only making you fear it more, because what you resist will be what you fear. Resistance is not going to protect you from anything, because ultimately you're still going to experience the negative aspects of any situation, whether or not you resist it, because you're holding yourself back from doing the things you want, or you're attempting the fear and risking the uncertainty and the failure and all that stuff. So either way, you're going to experience some negativity. It's unavoidable. It's not going to always feel good. You're going to have to experience discomfort, but you might as well do it in a way that is allowing you to understand yourself better, to show yourself that you're capable of more than you thought you were, by pushing through the resistance and not using it as a way to prove to yourself that things are scary because you're resisting them. I hope this was informative. I hope it made sense. Sometimes I find that I can talk about concepts or ideas that might be a little bit, a little bit convoluted, a little bit esoteric. It's just how my mind works. So I hope it resonates with you. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic and what you're resisting in your life that you've now convinced yourself is scary when it might not be. And if you've attempted something recently that you were resisting for a long time, and how you feel about yourself now that you've done it. I think that's really interesting as well. That's why I love journaling, just documenting this stuff, reading back and seeing how much you've changed since doing these things. If you want to talk about these things in more detail with me, feel free to book a one-to-one call over on my website. If you want to read about these topics, I write a lot over on my Substack. And if you want to see my short form content, follow me on TikTok and Instagram. Other than that, thank you for being here, and I'll be back again soon with another episode.